The global brand director for ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2, based in Bellevue with the studio. And I'm here to talk a little bit about Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2. So, as I was saying, with the original Guild Wars, we wanted to introduce a number of things into the area of online RPGs. We definitely did not want to make the same type of online RPG that everybody else was making. One of the core things that we did is, in an effort to, work against grind, we really, as gamers, grind is not something that we're particularly fond of. We set our level cap especially low. We actually set it to 20. Interestingly enough, while that definitely addressed the issue of having a low grind game, one of the things we got back from our players at the time was, you know what, we actually like seeing the numbers go up. We actually like the idea of having more levels. And so that's something we took into consideration. The other thing that we wanted to do with Guild Wars is make it highly instanced. We felt that the instancing actually helped avoid a number of the problems that come with MMOs. Things like waiting in line to get to a boss, camping a spawn. Instancing definitely allows for that. And also the other thing we discovered with instancing was that it allows for wonderful storytelling. When you get your group into its own instance, you can do highly customized activities, scripted events that really move the story along in a way that feels meaningful to players. And of course, one of the other big things we introduced with Guild Wars was our business model, which was effectively buy the game, play online for as long as you like. And we really do feel that that is in large part responsible for the millions of players that we now have in both North America and Europe who love Guild Wars. At last count, we've sold over 6.5 million units. And I believe at this point, the majority of those are in Europe, and Germany is a large part of that. So that's one of the reasons why we're here at GamesCom. It's a very important market for us. If you had any time to go down to the show floor, you'll see that our fan base is very, very passionate about Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2. So let's go ahead and talk about how a couple years later we decided, you know what, we really want to take Guild Wars 2 to the next level. And one of the things we found is we wanted to add persistence. One of the things that we found is while instancing was a great way to deliver certain types of gameplay, the one thing that persistence adds in a game like Guild Wars 2 is it adds that social glue. You're out in the world, somebody who you had no idea was out there can come and help you, and we love creating those kind of social moments. Also, when the world is persistent, you see the same people again and again, and there is very much the illusion of the shared world becomes complete. And so we said, you know what, we do definitely want to add persistence to Guild Wars 2 and definitely put an end to the old question, well, is Guild Wars an MMO or not? Technically, if the way you define an MMO is there large persistent spaces, then the answer is absolutely. Guild Wars 2 is an MMO. But in many ways, we do away with what we consider to be the baggage of a lot of other MMOs, game types. We wanted to work in three very specific areas. One, which we'll go into a lot of detail, is personal story. Just like in Guild Wars 1, we knew that the instancing technology was a great way to deliver a personal story. And so we said, we can take everything we learned about instancing and storytelling in Guild Wars 1 and really blow it out in Guild Wars 2. Really make people feel like their choices, decisions have impact on them, have impact on the people around you, have impact on your immediate environment. So that's really the emphasis of personal story that we'll talk about in a second. The other is, I've already talked about these large persistent spaces and how they allow for these great social experiences between players of a shared world. But we did find that the way a lot of quest content, which is the majority of how content gets delivered in MMOs, they were actually fundamentally antisocial. If you've ever been on a quest and there's somebody else on the same quest in the same area, a lot of times you're actually competing for resources. You're competing for mobs, you're competing for trophies, and we were like, this is really actually very counterproductive. We want to create game content that encourages people to work together. We want to create these dynamic events that make the world feel alive and not repetitive. We want it to be that you never resent seeing another player show up in your area, because they're just going to make the content more interesting and more fun. And the last thing that we're really pushing on in terms of innovating is combat. Now, MMO combat has gone through a few rounds of evolution in the last few years. But the fact is, at ArenaNet, we're not just MMO players. We're not just RPG players. We play shooters. We play action games. We play console games. And for the longest time, we looked at MMO combat and we were like, you know what? We can do a lot better. We can make MMO combat feel a lot more action-oriented, responsive, have the player really be present in the world, engaged, paying attention to what's going on the screen, instead of looking at stat bars or skill descriptions. Really just looking at fun, cool stuff going on in the game and having a much more enjoyable, fun combat experience. So, with that, I'll go ahead and take you into the demo. The world of Guild Wars 2 takes place 250 years after the original Guild Wars, and a lot has happened in that time. During that time, these elemental creatures, the Elder Dragons, have awoken. And these are not like small little dragon mobs. These are enormous forces of nature that have gone ahead and disrupted continents worth of landmass. And as they fly through the world of Tyria, they've corrupted certain parts of the landmass where their minions are rising up and beginning to encroach on the civilized parts of Tyria. So, in this situation, there are 5 races. There are 5 races in the world of Tyria that the only way that Tyria can be saved is if they can get over their differences and band together in order to fight the dragons. If they cannot, the world will fall. So, here are an example of our 5 races. On the far left, there is the feline char, a very warlike race. We have the very reliable humans. They were the main race in the first Guild Wars. These two are the ones that we're going to be playing with on the demo today. But we also have the very Viking-like giant Norns, the small but brilliant Azura, and then the very nature-oriented, mystical Silvari, which we'll be making playable at a later time. So for the purpose of this first part of the demo, we'll go ahead and select human, female, and now we get to select your profession. We've announced that our game will have 8 professions, and previously we'd announced that we have Elementalist, Warrior, Ranger, and now just for GamesCom we introduced the Necromancer. Necromancer, as you could probably guess, uses dark forces of magic, life-sucking energy, as well as summoning undead minions to help support. For this demo, we'll go ahead and select Elementalist. And here we're at a character customization screen. Again, for speed reasons, we have disabled character customization and just done a random creation. But in the final character customization for Guild Wars 2, we'll literally have millions of options for you to customize the look and feel of your character. So now we get to a part of the character creation process that I'm not sure any MMOs have. This is called your biography. And it is in your biography that you will be able to select very specific things that will determine how your character's personality, storyline develops through the course of the game. The first question is a pretty easy one. It's basically an accessory and jewelry question. By going through water, or fire, or you notice the little gem on the head of my Elementalist changes color. It actually doesn't have any hard gameplay. In fact, it's just a nice, cool visual differentiation. Let's go ahead and take a look. That looks good. This one is rather interesting. This is an introduction to our personality system. I talked a little bit about having personal story be a much bigger part of the game. We call it kind of putting the RPG back into MMORPG. And this is an example of how we're doing it. Your personality system has a number of ways to measure it. The 3 initial ones are you can interact charmingly, with dignity, or ferociously. Depending how you choose that, this is your initial disposition in the game. Somebody who becomes particularly ferocious in his interactions with NPCs, for example, as he walks through the city, children may run screaming from him, in fear. Whereas if you're someone who's particularly charming, children may run up and follow you and sing your praises as you walk through the city. Likewise, as you have conversations with NPCs, depending on what your personality is, will open up different conversation trees and different ways to interact with you. For example, someone who's particularly ferocious may have an opportunity to end a conversation by punching the NPC in the face. So let's go ahead and pick ferocious, just for fun. So this next one says I was raised as a commoner, a noble, or in the streets. This has a very immediate impact on how your story of the world will start. For example, my common folk, I will have friends who are kind of what we call, blue-collar workers, salt of the earth friends. If I had chosen nobility, so you notice the clothing changes a little bit. If I chose nobility, I'll have very highly placed, noble friends who spend lots of money on me. And the last one, streets. I'll have to worry about things like street gangs, and maybe I ran in a street gang for a while before I came to my current place. Let's choose common folk for now. And this next one is kind of fun. We won't see the full impact of these, but these will have rather far-reaching effects later on. What is your biggest regret? One might be, you got passed up for an opportunity, you never recovered your sister's body, and this was our personal favorite. I was passed up for an opportunity to join the circus. Chances are, choose that one, something circus-related will come across your doorstep in your personal story. This last one is you choose which human god is you're most affiliated with, and this will also drastically alter how your personal story plays out. Now, what I just showed you, all those things, are very specific to the humans. If I were to play a Char or an Azur or a Nord, I would get a completely different set of experience. For example, the social standing questions, Char don't have this notion of common nobility in the streets. They may be asked, which legion are you affiliated with? So again, from terms of customizing your personal story, replayability, you'll have a lot of different options if you decide personal story is the way you want to progress through the game. So go ahead, you'll see what happens here is a couple of paragraphs, we've summarized all the choices that you've made. This is effectively the beginning of your biography. This is the beginning of your story.
The human race once ruled Tyria.
So what you're seeing here
Now we struggle to hold our ground.
is the painterly, hand-drawn, illustrated
We've been
concept art
defeated,
that we're
driven
famous for
back,
in Arena. We integrated these into our cinematics
Not surrender.
to give this feel
So
of
many
grandeur.
nations have fallen. Only Crichton still stands. Our faith is strong, despite the silence of the six gods. With courage, we'll make our stand in divinity's reach.
So now at this point, the cinematic actually branches based on the choices you made.
The city is my home.
Show you that
I was born to common folk,
Born to
just
common.
one among many. My friends and I don't seek attention or glory. It's hard enough making ends meet. But I believe we can still shape a brighter world out of the ashes of the past. Today, I stepped outside of divinity's reach to see the wall. But when I arrived in Shane, the town was under siege by centaurs. Innocent villagers are in danger. Someone has to help.
You'll see here we actually integrate your character into the cinematic.
I have to fight. I have to make a stand. This is my story.
So at this point, we're going to heading over to an area called Shaymore. Shaymore is a small village located outside of the main human city of Divinity's Reach. This is basically a tutorial area where we're going to start the game.